The thing is proceeding very slowly, because no sooner does one set about finally disposing of subjects to which one has devoted years of study than they start revealing new aspects and demand to be thought out further. An obsessive perfectionist, he was forever seeking out new hues for his palette, studying mathematics, learning about the movement of celestial spheres, teaching himself Russian so he could read books on the country's land system. Or, to quote Fraunhofer again, "Alas, I thought for a moment that my work was finished, but I have certainly gone wrong in some details, and my mind will not be at rest until I have cleared away my doubts. I have decided to travel and visit Turkey, Greece, and Asia in search of models, in order to compare my picture with nature in different forms." Why did Marx recall Balzac's tale at the very moment when he was preparing to unveil his greatest work to public scrutiny? Did he fear that he too might have laboured in vain, that his complete representation of reality would prove unintelligible? He certainly had some such apprehensions. Marx's character was a curious hybrid of ferocious self-confidence and anguished self-doubt, and he tried to forestall criticism by warning in the preface that, "I assume, of course, a reader who is willing to learn something new and therefore to think for himself." But what ought to strike us most forcibly about his identification with the creator of the unknown masterpiece is that Fraunhofer is an artist, not a political economist, nor yet a philosopher or historian or polemicist. The most delightful irony of all in the unknown masterpiece, noted by the American writer Marshall Berman, is that Balzac's account of the picture is a perfect description of a 20th-century abstract painting, and the fact that he couldn't have known this merely deepens the resonance. The point is that where one age sees only chaos and incoherence, a later or more modern age may discover meaning and beauty, Berman writes. Thus, the very open-endedness of Marx's later work can make contact with our time in ways that more finished 19th-century work cannot. Das Kapital reaches beyond the well-made works of Marx's century into the discontinuous modernism of our own. Like Fraunhofer, Marx was a modernist avant la lettre. His famous account of dislocation in the Communist Manifesto, "All that is solid melts into air," prefigures the hollow men and the unreal city depicted by T.S. Eliot. Or Yeats's "Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold." By the time he wrote Das Kapital, he was pushing out beyond conventional prose into radical literary collage, juxtaposing voices and quotations from mythology and literature, from factory inspectors' reports and fairy tales, in the manner of Ezra Pound's Cantors or Eliot's The Waste Land. Das Kapital is as discordant as Schoenberg, as nightmarish as Kafka. Karl Marx saw himself as a creative artist, a poet of dialectic. "Now, regarding my work, I will tell you the plain truth about it," he wrote to Engels in July 1865. "Whatever shortcomings they may have, the advantage of my writings is that they are an artistic whole." It was to poets and novelists, far more than to philosophers or political essayists, that he looked for insights into people's material motives and interests. In a letter of December 1868, he copied out a passage from another work by Balzac, The Village Priest, and asked if Engels could confirm the picture from his own knowledge of practical economics. The conservative, royalist Balzac may seem an unlikely hero, but Marx always held that great writers have insights into social reality that transcend their personal prejudices. Had he wished to write a conventional economic treatise, he would have done so, but his ambition was far more audacious. Berman describes the author of Das Kapital as one of the great tormented giants of the 19th century, alongside Beethoven, Goya, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Ibsen, Nietzsche, Van Gogh, who drive us crazy as they drove themselves, but whose agony generated so much of the spiritual capital on which we still live. Yet how many people would think of including Karl Marx in a list of great writers and artists? Even in our post-modern era, the fractured narrative and radical discontinuity of Das Kapital are mistaken by many potential readers for formlessness and incomprehensibility. The main purpose of my own book is to persuade at least some of these readers to look again. Anyone willing to grapple with Beethoven, Goya, or Tolstoy should be able to learn something new from a reading of Das